Well, we've reached Friday, the end of another week of the Player Pundit Hangout here on OneSoccer. Back again with the usual culprits, Kurt Larson, Oliver Platt. I'm Adam Jenkins, and our special guest today, he is a football fanatic, a soccer savant, and a purveyor of proper pies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, James Sharman.
Hello, everyone. It's only been a year since I first begged Kurt to get me on OneSoccer in some capacity. Emails, texts, every day ever since, and finally here we are. And what great timing in the middle of a crisis. But yes, I'm thankful to be here. Hello,
a trial of sorts for you, James. A trial of sorts for you.
An audition, man. I should be nervous then, right?
Oh yeah, we wanted to bring you on at the most crucial time of our calendar, so that if and when this goes off the rails, there's going to be no bloodshed.
Well, it means a lot to me, obviously. I did my hair this morning. I shaved, so even wearing specs for the first time. So obviously I care greatly about it.
You probably don't want to wear those specs if you're going to be staring at us for the next 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, but this lighting is so unforgiving. If it can cover my bags up, I'll do what I've got to do. I thought about wearing shades actually. But
still looks better than Oliver Platt's background. The guy refuses to change the York 9 kit. He's had it up there for a week straight now.
There is actually a minor change today. My head is essentially blocking it out in its entirety, but the Atletico Ottawa scarf is gone.
Oh my goodness, buckle up.
It's been replaced by one of the most unpopular teams in English football, MK Dons, in the background.
I actually did a feature on them once, many years ago. I interviewed Pete Winkleman, the owner, the chairman.
Yeah, he's a character.
He certainly is, right? He's great. And, obviously the questions were, what were you doing, man? Like, you just destroyed a fan base. And the way he described it was actually, Wimbledon was going to die anyway. So we had to the rebirth was in Milton Keynes, which, as you know, Ollie, is a lovely place.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here, but I've got a bit of a soft spot for MK Dons, even though they're much hated and maligned across the world.
Yeah, I think Pete has that effect on people. He is extremely charming, slightly odd.
And it is that charm that Ollie has brought to OneSoccer. I'm grateful for it every single day. We've been talking a lot about the CPL, and since we started this show, I lost track of the days, lost track of the hours, but we've been focusing a lot on Canada soccer. So today, when we've brought James in with the idea of speaking about European football and just opening that view of the soccer universe that we don't always get to on OneSoccer. And the reason we did it is we just want to continue to tell James that they're going to cancel and void the season because that crest on his shirt is burning a hole every day, I'm sure, with the worry that the title won't happen. It
is nerve-wracking, that's for sure. There's still so much we don't know about the whole situation, especially in Europe right now. We know it's obviously very, very bad, but what are the alternatives to nulling and voiding the season, which has been discussed? And to me, that would be the wrong thing to do. But at the point we are right now, we don't know what is safe and what isn't safe. I know that if they did cancel the season, nothing happened, would start again next year at some point, it would absolutely devastate a very large global fan base, including this idiot right here. 30 years is a long time. It's one of the great seasons in soccer history. And to wipe it out after 29 games or so seems to me extremely harsh, to say the very least. So there has to be alternatives. I think there are alternatives, but to just say that the season's done. Obviously, I'm biased, guys. Obviously, but I think even any football fan would be, I think, happy to agree that there must be a solution here. Whether that means playing games behind empty doors, calling it as it is right now in the table, or eventually in a perfect world playing in front of full stadiums in a few months' time. There's options out there, I suppose, but it's still pretty early to figure out the right choice.
We're going to talk about some of those options and maybe how we think things should play out, particularly in the European leagues. But I haven't seen too many people calling for the season to be null and void. I mean, is that just a few outspoken voices? Because that would be absolutely ridiculous and would be completely unfair to everybody throughout, league football and let's say the UK.
I think a lot of owners and chairwomen who happen to be in charge of teams in the relegation zone would love that. They're all over it.
Yeah.
I know Karen Brady was saying, no, just call it as it is now, because we're just on goal differential safe at West Ham. So obviously there's personal agendas at play here. But 29 games is almost the entire season. I think the safest solution right now, let's be honest, is to say, okay, as it stands right now, the standings are as they are. We'll crown Liverpool a champion. Maybe we don't have relegation this year. I know you're shaking your head there, Kurt, because you're a cynical man. But
I thought my head was too small. I couldn't.
I know, but okay, don't relegate teams this year. Maybe promote 2 teams from the second tier. Have an expanded league next year, then have say 5 teams going down next year. That might be the safest route, but I still think the teams are trying to get these games in, and if it means empty stadiums in a couple of months' time from now, I'm fine with that. It's neat and it's tidy. The fans suffer, yeah, but they're going to suffer anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Listen, I'm not going to complete this season across Europe, across the world with fans in the stadium. That's just not going to happen. That would be foolish, irresponsible. So if you play the games, ideally, it's not the perfect scenario, but it's neat and it's tidy. You crown champions, and I think that's the only thing you can do, really, fairly.
Yeah, for me, you have to finish the season, even if it means empty stadiums, even if it even means bleeding into next year's calendar. I think you still do it. And there is, I think, a growing movement, I guess, in the Premier League in particular for the season to be voided. I don't think it's a majority yet, but there are those voices there. There was a piece in The Athletic this morning. But for me, that creates as many problems as trying to finish the season, because you have all kinds of permutations as to teams that don't get promoted and have essentially had a promotion caliber season to this point and then don't get that massive injection of Premier League cash. The teams that don't get relegated out of the Premier League get another year in the Premier League, and we know what that means financially. And you have a team like Leicester City that is almost guaranteed to qualify for the Champions League and get that huge benefit to their club that wouldn't happen, right, if we voided the season. So for me, there's all kinds of problems with voiding the season, which is kind of being put forward as a way to just clean the slate, but it doesn't do that at all.
The first thing I wanted to double check when talking to 2 heavy hitters of European football analysis, and James Sharman and Oliver Platt, was to double check, how many match days have been played throughout most of the European leagues. Now, the reason I don't think they need to play out the rest of the season is because they've played a significant portion of the season. So we don't have to finish the season because we've played 75% of the season, and we know who has earned the right to stay up and we know who has not earned the right to stay up. What I would say, and I do like James' idea of maybe just promoting a few teams and leaving things the same. So maybe you have 22 teams, 23 teams in the Premier League. I like that idea. But what I like even more is a playoff. And playoffs. I support them in Major League Soccer. Do a playoff, do a relegation playoff, because there are so many teams that are at the bottom right now that are tight in the Premier League. So do a relegation playoff. We already know who deserves to stay up based on the percentage of the season that's been played, and that's how I'd settle it, as long as we're talking about them not finishing the rest of the season, of course.
I just think that momentum is such a huge part of soccer, and you're seeing some teams who have struggled all year long, but are now slowly finding their form. Watford being an example, maybe even in Norwich, who have been, in the basement the entire season, but are showing some, some really good performances and better results in recent weeks. Teams have brought players in the window in January. Teams have fired coaches, brought coaches in. Now they're finding their form, and they want to play those 10 more games or 9 more games to show what they're at. Listen, I understand playoff is a very North American way of doing sports. I think it's exciting. It's great theater. It'd be great TV. Of course it would. I just think it's unfair. These teams enter the season in most cases with a single table format. That's what they're prepared for. That's what they built for. To say suddenly, no, we're going to go to a knockout playoff North American style format to end the season. To me, it's just not the way the season was meant to be to begin with, And listen, there's no right answer here or wrong answer. Someone's going to get screwed here. It's going to be unfair, but listen, this is so far beyond sport. I think for anyone to really complain that their team's getting, the short end of the stick, are pretty selfish. You put yourself in the shoes of those Premier League executives, those Serie A executives, the La Liga executives right now in particular. I mean, what kind of place are they in right now? That is dreadful. This is not what they expected. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. just try and get the games in if at all possible. If it's not possible, then sure, there's other alternatives, but try. And right now, it's not too late to salvage something of this season's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good point that there's much more on the line right now than just football. But the reality is, eventually, a decision will have to be made. So I guess my follow-up question to all of this, we can go around the horn here, is when is the latest do you think these executives would feel comfortable making a definitive decision either way?
Well, like UEFA have obviously kind of set a target of tying things up by the end of June or July, I believe. So that puts a little bit of a deadline on things. But as I said, I wouldn't hate the idea of us tying up this season into next season's calendar, into September, October, and then trying to do some kind of a bridge 2020-2021 season to then get back on track. Obviously, that would be challenging with the Euros and the Olympics and everything being pushed back to next summer as well. It would be a very busy calendar. But for me, I don't hate the idea of maybe promoting teams but not relegating teams. But I still think, by and large, you have to find a way to finish the season for a number of reasons. So I don't know if there is a deadline personally.
And I think with Euro being, bumped to year, it really affords them a lot of time to cram some more games in here. These players are being rested right now. If nothing else, they are going to be pretty fresh when games resume. So can you cram in, a midweek game each week, for a few weeks to get these games in? I think it's quite possible. And God forbid you got to cancel your summer tours, right? Oh, geez, those cash grabs.
What will we do?
They're done, right? So play, meaningful games instead, and then maybe you can get them to the beginning of, say, July. I don't know, wrap them up there, roundabouts, and then you can probably kick off once again in August when you were intending to. So I think right now football is probably the one sport where it has got it can afford itself a bit of time to figure this out. You have it all summer to think about this. Next summer's going to be nuts. We know that it's going to be actually a plethora of football. It's going to be fantastic. Copa, Euro, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. But right now, I think football is in pretty good shape if everything we read and hear is true, that, in a couple of months, normalcy to a certain point might resume.
Yeah. I think Oliver's idea of combining the two seasons is absolutely insane. It would just cause even more of a mess that would it's just not possible, right? That's just fairy tale, in my opinion.
I'm not saying combine. I'm saying if you need to push next season back, you do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You're saying that you would like to finish the season by encroaching on the next season. It just gets too confusing. The cleanest thing to do is to just end the season if necessary. We're sorry to the bottom three. You're going down, and we're going to start fresh come the summer.
How small is your heart, Kurt?
Well,
it's cringe level. It's cringe level.
I think 17 teams would agree with me on this.
To right me, now, that's impossible on a practical level. Like, you'd have so many legal possibilities with that in terms of relegating teams and having them lose such an enormous amount of money when they haven't actually played a full season. You could have pushback from the broadcasters who haven't had a full season of games to broadcast. They're going to ask for some of their money back. For me, that doesn't work. Like, you have to find a way to finish in some way or another. As you said, there could be alternative formats of doing that rather than just playing all the games out and maybe a playoff or something like that.
Well, we're seeing now too, Ollie. We're seeing now, more and more rumors from across Europe, smaller teams being literally weeks away from not existing, from going bankrupt. I think the bubble's going to burst at some point in football. It's been on the brink for a long time. Too many clubs operate on that brink and are poorly run. So there's going to be a cleansing of sorts. So maybe football as we know it is not going to ever look the same. And maybe in some ways that's not a bad thing, because at some point this madness has to end, right? The way these clubs are being run, there's too many clubs, simple as that, poorly run, no money coming in, and it's harsh, it's sad, but boy, when these games kick off again for a full season, I think the world game could look very different.
Yeah, it's possible.
I'm just happy to see Oliver Platt fired up for once.
It's tough right now in England. Like, clubs, especially outside the Premier League, obviously they're already laying off staff or furloughing staff at least. They've run out of money already, essentially. So it's a really difficult position to be in, and that's why I think there has to be some kind of completion to the season.
The financial part is obviously not something you can overlook. I mean, you have Barcelona slashing their players' wages after asking them if they would take a hit, to which the players said no, and then the club went ahead and did it anyways. And then it's a good point about, and I believe it's France, where one of the chairmen saying, if we don't start soon or find a way to slow down this bleed of cash, we're going to have half of our clubs go bankrupt. I think ESPN reported a figure, the five major leagues have already lost something like $4 billion, and the French league alone is $500 million or 600 billion euros, not dollars, excuse me. So it's wild times. But we don't have the answers. Obviously, we could go about this for a while. So let's talk about the exact opposite situation happening right now in everyone's favorite tourist destination, Belarus, where that football system has said, you know what? The president wants us to go ahead, so we have to go ahead. And they're one of 5 countries in the world with football happening right now. Kurt, I know you like a little bit of chaos. That's part of your brand. What are your thoughts on the Belarusians' decision to just plow forward, coronavirus or no coronavirus?
Well, a few things came to mind. One of the first things was Belarus cannot be the only league still up and running. I think you actually did some research on that, didn't you?
Yeah, there are 5 countries right now, as of yesterday, still playing. It's Belarus, Nicaragua, Turkmenistan, Burundi, and Myanmar.
Okay.
So they're not the only scapegoats, but
one of the things I did was I went to see if the North Korean league was still playing. You're going to find
next step.
You're going to find this hard to believe, but there are actually no up-to-date live scores from the North Korean professional football league. Although
who's the leader's favorite team? Because then I think we can guess who's winning.
Yeah, I didn't get that far. As soon as it didn't come up in my ESPN FC, I decided to stop looking because I knew you would do all the legwork on this. A few things came to mind. First of all, well, I mean, social distancing still exists at these games in Belarus because the average attendance for each team is 2,500. And as a result of that, you know that when we talk about attendance figures, usually they're inflated by at least 2,000 or double. So, only a couple hundred people are going to these games. So the social distancing still exists. But the question I would throw out there to the group would be, let's say you could watch these games somewhere. I'm not sure, maybe you can, but let's say they were available. Let's say they were readily available.
On OneSoccer.ca, get your subscription today.
We don't have the rights as of right now, but if they were available, would you tune in?
Well, to start with, I'm pretty sure the Turkmenistan League is available. Just guessing. Don't know for sure.
Is that some insider baseball there that you?
Yeah, listen. That region is a conveyor belt of talent. We know that, but I'm pretty sure it's available. Would I watch it? Absolutely not. I love football. I do. But I'm not one of those guys that has to watch the worst quality football, just because it's on. There's a lot of other stuff on. Netflix is great, by the way. You may want to give it a try at some point. A good sports documentary is better. You don't need to watch football just because it's on. If you do, well, good for you, but some of us have lives. And,
some of us love the game. Some of us love the game more than that.
I wouldn't watch it either, but there is a group of people who would watch it.
And we know who they are, don't we?
That is the gambling population who need something to game on right now. So don't get me wrong, this is completely irresponsible in my opinion. But if you think about how much coverage the Belarusian league is getting right now, how many people are watching these games compared to what their normal audiences would be on TV, and how many people are betting on them, like they're probably going to do pretty well out of this, aside from the public health concerns.
Aside from that minor detail.
2 weekends ago, before the real physical distancing began, I had a friend over just for a few drinks. There was no sport. It's the first weekend with no sport. And he's a degenerate gambler. And he found the Barbados Premier League on Bet365. And
Bayesian footy.
St. Andrews, I don't know, wherever it's called, St. Andrews team was down 2-0 to someone else with half an hour left. He put $10 on them and he won 100. So there's always a game somewhere to bet on, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know Oliver Platt was doing a little bit. I know Oliver Platt was doing a bit of research on what's going on in Belarus, and he found some pretty interesting stuff from who was it over there? The Minister of Sport or the President? What was it, Oliver?
I've got it open here. I believe it was the President himself.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Why they're still going is because the President just wanted to see soccer.
He suggested that instead of panicking like those in Western Europe, one should have 40 to 50 grams of vodka daily, go to a sauna 2 to 3 times a week, and keep working on a farm. It's tough work, and a tractor can cure anything.
True.
There's a leader for you right there.
Yeah. That sounds like my best friend's dad, to be quite honest with you, except not vodka, some Jack Daniels.
That's
wow. It's just incredible, isn't it? Really, it's highlighting different areas of the world and how they deal with crisis. A lot of these areas are used to crisis too, right? It's not.
True.
This is new to us in the Western world. All our snowflakes. It's a lot harder for us, I guess. But man, you hear that, and you shake your head.
Yeah, the panic Western world. Who needs science or any sort of facts?
We say that, but certain Western leaders have come out with things that aren't that far removed from what
That's fair.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it working for Boris right now, eh? Jeez, he's coronavirus.
Yeah, I don't think he's shaking hands anymore.
No.
Where's the Prince of Wales now? Boris, the whole country is just in the tank, isn't it? Seems like a good point to move on from Belarus. That's probably the most we will ever speak about Belarus in our entire existence here at OneSoccer. So we've been noodling with different games over the week. We've been trying to find ways to come up with content other than just listening to us speak. And we're glad you tune in to listen to us speak. But we also like to play some games here and there. And today's game is the situation. You have one player to build your franchise around. If you are the owner of a franchise just starting up, you have fresh or full freedom to pick anyone you want, and you're guaranteed to have that player, assuming healthy, for 5 years. Who are you picking, and defend your choice? We'll give our guest of honor today the first crack at it.
Oh, that's me. I'm the guest of honor, am I?
Yeah,
okay.
No, I was actually talking about myself in the third person.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. You know what? This is going to probably sound really boring, all right? Because listen, there's great young players. 5 years is a big key here, right? You know, so who's going to be fresh for 5 years? But this guy's inhuman. It's going to be an obvious choice, I think, to a lot of people. But just bear with me. Leo Messi is not old. He's perhaps reaching the end of his prime. We keep saying that, of course, right? And he keeps putting on these ridiculous numbers. He still makes everyone around him better on that team. He still has brand appeal as well, and call me boring, but when I'm building a team, I'm looking at a player more beyond his footballing attributes. What can he do off the field to make my club legitimate? You put Leo Messi in any team in the world, and suddenly, even MK Dons, suddenly they're a world force, right? And they're a world brand.
I know about that.
I'm doing Messi in the well, maybe not. In 5 years' time, though, obviously he's going to be well into his mid-30s, but he's still going to be an impactful player. It's going to be Messi. We'll get to younger players later, I'm sure, and there's probably better choices, but I just can't see past the greatest player arguably of all time.
James Sharman is a very smart man. I'm going to go after Oliver Platt. I like to go last on these things.
Okay. Well, mine, I thought this might be the popular pick and then a bit of a boring pick, but maybe it won't be. Mine is Kylian Mbappe. I think he's 21 years old now, and sometimes we talk about the prime of players being 27, 28. I think with attacking players, that's not true. They're pretty much as good as they'll ever be at age 21. Messi, I think, is an example of that. As brilliant as he still is, I think he was better 10 years ago than he is now. So Mbappe, his goal-scoring record is unbelievable. He's scoring a goal a game. Yes, he needs to get out of Paris because I don't think that league is any kind of challenge to him anymore. But for me, he is as good as any player on the planet already, and will only get better over the next 5 years. So between his brilliance on the pitch and the huge name appeal that he has now, for me, he's an easy pick.
And just think about all those coaches you can kill in the next 5 years.
I knew Oliver Platt would go this route of trying to select a younger player with a little bit more longevity than more wily general managers or owners like James Sharman and myself. I'm going closer to what James Sharman has done. I'm going the LA Galaxy route. I could care less what this person does for me long-term on the field, because for me, it's all about selling millions and millions of kits. It's all about my crest being everywhere as an owner, starting a club. It's all about worldwide marketability. This person also has plenty of quality still, mind you, a proven winner, and somebody who I think has the drive to play well into his late 30s. I am going with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yep, I get it for the same reasons that I picked Messi, absolutely. And again, another guy that just every year you think this will be the year he takes a step back, and well, there it is, goal every single game, right? And brand appeal, us capitalists like Kurt and myself, we appreciate the money coming in, rolling in through.
We just know how to build a club, James. Yep,
we
just know how to build a club.
I think you know how to build MLS's latest franchise with a pick like Cristiano Ronaldo. He would be a dream for Inter Miami. I'm not sure if
Juventus just did the same thing. Juventus literally just did the same thing.
They did it a year ago, and I don't know if it's panned out for them particularly well.
Sold a lot of kits.
Mbappe's a superstar. He's won a World Cup. He's one of the biggest names on the planet.
Listen, I love Mbappe, but I fear a little bit for Mbappe just because what you read, what you see off the field. Has he got that propensity to derail himself a little bit? And that's my concern. Is he really enjoying the fame a little bit too much? I'm not sure Neymar's the greatest influence on him.
Nah.
To be honest with you. But from a purely technical footballing standpoint, my God, I mean, the kid's something really special, generational. But I don't know. The older I get, the crustier I get, and the more I become disillusioned with youth. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, for me, he is the Messi of this generation, or he will be. He arguably already is. I agree, he does need to get out of Paris and away from Neymar. I don't normally advocate for players going to Real Madrid, but I'd quite like him to maybe get to Spain or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
James, based on that last comment alone, I think you and I are going to get along really well. For my 2 cents, my answer was taken. I'd go with Messi just because I would never want anything to do with Cristiano Ronaldo. That's just I'm not over the whole end of the last Euro championship, even though we didn't play.
I do just feel like Messi just doesn't have that little bit off the field to help.
He's not nearly the same level of star, no, but I think he brings enough star quality where you're not going to go, oh, he's starting with Lionel Messi. If only they had Cristiano Ronaldo. So he still gives you results. He's got some time. I like Mbappe. I thought about that pick too. And I know people were going to assume that I'd take Gareth Bale. A lot of those people would probably be right. But I've been taking too many cracks from Kurt on my off-the-board picks. So playing it safe with Lionel Messi.
You're learning. Okay.
I'm learning slowly but surely. Next question. Who is the best player under 25 years old in the world right now? Kurt, you went last because you like to go last, but I'm in charge. I'm a moderator.
You're okay.
Appointed. This is your fault. So,
I like you. I like you. Very, very strong of you. Okay, Oliver Platt is not going to be a surprise to him because the first time I saw a highlight video of this player, I could not believe the way he was able to move on the field despite his size. He's like Zlatan with far more pace. 8 games for Borussia Dortmund, I believe, 9 goals already. I think he's still a teenager at 19. I'm going with Norwegian international Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I love that pick. I believe when I introduced Kurt to this guy, I described him as Suarez crossed with Ibrahimovic. And you know how Kurt is. You could see the skepticism in his eyes at that description. And then he pulled up a YouTube video and he was just blown away by this guy. So that was my answer's the same, obviously, Mbappe.
Yeah,
well, you had to. You had no choice.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're very fortunate at the moment. Just there are so many great kids. I'm saying kids. They're teenagers. They're 21. They're 20. They're so young right now. And Haaland's a guy that I'm really enjoying watching him play. But I don't know. I'm waiting for him to come back to earth. But he doesn't. He goes to Dortmund, this great, wonderful young attacking team, and his numbers are just absolutely insane. However, I'm not picking either one of those because they're both wrong. The guy I'm going to pick is a guy that, again, you're going to call me biased, but I don't care. I am biased. But he's a guy that is redefining the position. He is a guy that is making fullback sexy for maybe the first time ever. Trent Alexander-Arnold, a guy that I watch probably more than any other player. To be honest with you, that's probably a little bit unfair because I watch Liverpool so much, but I'm watching this kid play. I don't know if anyone delivers the ball better in European football right now than this kid. He is absolutely sensational. He's calm. He's composed for a guy that's just barely 20. He's a wonderful footballer, and he's key to that team. And those 2 fullbacks at Liverpool, Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, are just, like I said, redefining the position at the moment. So I'm going with him right now. you can't really go wrong with some of these picks. But let's go with a defender, because defenders get no love, do they? Finally getting a guy that's getting a lot of love, and I think we should really champion him and embrace him.
Yeah, he's an amazing player, and for me, he's like kind of the Gerrard of this generation, in that he's an unbelievably gifted all-round footballer who can basically do everything. But he's playing right back, which, as you mentioned, is like the bizarre aspect of it. And
do you think, Ollie, he's going to eventually move further forward, like and away from that position?
I don't know, to be honest. I could see it potentially. It depends how you want to play, right? Like as you said, the way that Liverpool use their fullbacks just makes him absolute dynamite at that position. So I wouldn't see that changing while Klopp's there, but I certainly think he has the ability to be a central midfielder.
But that's why I say he's redefining the position.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, generally speaking, you don't have your best players at fullback, but the way that they're utilized by Klopp, they're so dynamic and they're so important to the build-up play. He is, that is the modern fullback attacking. He's maybe not the greatest defensive fullback just yet. He's not bad though, in fairness. But he's not there with maybe the best. But he's 20 years old, for crying out loud, right? He's going to get better, which is frightening to say the very least.
Yeah, brilliant player.
Kurt, anything further? Are you happy?
I was just going to comment on, Haaland coming back down to earth. The reason I've selected him is, he has fantastic numbers, maybe a small sample size, but he's LeBron-like in his ability to move the way he does for his size. It's the physical gifts that really attract me to him. And obviously the numbers as well. Just his goal scoring rate is fantastic, but I've never seen a player like this.
Fair enough. Okay, final pop quiz, defend your answer style question of the day. Bringing it back a little bit closer to home. Who is the best player in CONCACAF right now? Has Alphonso Davies already put his name above the likes of Jimenez or Pulisic? What do we think here? Let's go Ollie first, because we haven't given him first crack yet.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Like, it depends what you mean by best player. I think.
God, just answer the question.
I'll get to it. Over the past few months, yes, I think he's been the best player in CONCACAF. If you're asking me who the best player is just on an objective level right now, I think it's Raul Jimenez of Mexico. I think he's the most complete player in CONCACAF. But certainly I'd have Davies as the most in form and the one with the biggest potential going forwards.
Is he the best player in Canada soccer right now then, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Jonathan David is fantastic, but what Davies is doing for Bayern Munich is unbelievable.
Yeah, James?
Yes, it's a really, like you mentioned, it's a really tough question, because again, there's some great young players coming through in CONCACAF, and I love the Raul Jimenez pick. I mean, he's done it. He's experienced. Obviously, he's a wonderful talent. Pulisic, I think, has a lot of potential to become the best player in the Confederation. He's learning his trade. He had a bit of a rough stint at the end of his last season in Germany, but he's really bouncing back now, I think, and becoming important to Frank Lampard. But right now, I'll go for Fonzie. Why the hell not? He's Canadian. How often can we even have this debate? How often can we even say that a Canadian is even up for contention right now? And for him to become an integral part of that Bayern Munich team, right? I repeat that, Bayern Munich. We're almost taking it for granted now. This is Bayern Munich, people. This is one of the greatest clubs in the history of football, in the history of sport. And this kid is becoming, so instrumental to the way they play. And whether he stays at fullback, again, another fullback. What is it about fullbacks? I'm not sure.
Not getting any love.
I know, apparently. But, whether he moves forward or wherever, he's got so much untapped talent right now. And he's already a star. So I'll go with Fonzie, but hey, you're probably right. I think Jimenez, to be honest with you, right now, as being the complete package, is probably just ahead of him. But I'm being biased once again.
Yeah, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this as an opportunity for the first time to publicly call out the voters of the Lou Marsh Award, who, it's my understanding that Alphonso Davies wasn't even in the top 5 in consideration for.
He didn't get a vote.
Best Canadian athlete. I'm pretty sure he wasn't even in the top 10 on a top 10 list for the best Canadian athlete of the year. And as James said, nobody expected that when Bayern Munich signed Alphonso Davies on a record transfer from Major League Soccer, that he would even get into the first team. He has 27 appearances. I thought he would have 0 right now, unless he got into a cup game. But he's a fixture. It still amazes me when I see him celebrating next to the likes of the teammates that he has on Bayern Munich. So it shocks me that I'm saying this a year after all this took place. And it shocked me even more when the Lou Marsh voters didn't even consider this guy to be among the best athletes in Canada in 2019. But Alphonso Davies is my pick.
And his TikTok's outstanding. Right?
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Nine-Nine bit is one of the funniest things I've seen in the past couple months.
But, you mentioned the Lou Marsh Award, and it's always a bone of contention with me. I always get frustrated. In the past, when Atiba's had a really good year in the Champions League, winning championships, with Besiktas, doesn't get consideration. I know for a fact his name's been brought up. Stephen Brunt, who we all know, one of the great journalists in Canadian sports, big football fan, understands Atiba. He's brought him up in conversation in those panels, and they just dismissed. Nah, soccer player. No, Canadian.
Well, you could understand them not wanting to go with someone like an Atiba Hutchinson because he's always been out of sight. He's always been out of mind, but for the occasional Champions League game that he features in, right? You can't understand the dismissal of Alphonso Davies, just given all the hype, before the move, leading up to the move, what he's done, with Canada under John Herdman, and then the ability to play in the games he's played in Germany. So I completely just thought it was unbelievable that even Alphonso Davies was basically scoffed at. Shocking.
Yeah.
For me, just to get my 2 cents in on it, what I find interesting about awards like Lou Marsh is generally teams, unless you're Sidney Crosby, team sports generally aren't considered. So sure, I understand why Bianca was the attractive pick just because of all the things she won. But had Davies in a similar situation won all similar competitions as a team, they'd say, well, he wasn't the reason they won. It's a team effort. But then you have Andreescu, and she had a fantastic year. I just think the point is he didn't even get, as you mentioned, Kurt, a single vote. Like there was no consideration.
If I was to tell you 5 years ago that a Canadian would win a major open in tennis, or a Canadian would be starring for Bayern Munich, which would you say was more likely?
That's a really great question.
That is a really good question.
I mean, I would say obviously the tennis player, I suppose, simply because we've seen Canadians flirt with success in the past.
And that is why what Alphonso Davies has done is the most impressive thing in Canadian sport.
I think a big part of it is that we're used to, in Canada and North America generally, we're used to the salary cap leagues, right? Where there isn't really these super clubs like Bayern. And so I don't think people fully appreciate how big Bayern Munich are in terms of global soccer and how hard it is to get in that starting lineup. So there's a bit of a cultural difference there, I think, that maybe prevents Davies from getting the recognition he deserves.
Well, I think it shows that we're not yet a football country, right? We're getting there, and OneSoccer, etc., being born helps it. Obviously, we're taking the right steps. We're going to be there eventually, but we're not there yet because the general sports fan doesn't still give enough credit to football and our players starring in those leagues. It's going to happen. Trust me. I've been 20 years. Adam, shut up. 20 years in this industry.
Me too.
And I'm still fighting it, right? And it still frustrates me. But I think there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're taking the right steps.
I guess one last point, and then we'll move on. But what I find interesting too is it's a good point. We're not yet a footballing country, which is still to me remarkable based on the diversity and the immigration being such a big part of our fabric. But we aren't a tennis country either. There are a lot of people who are finally able to celebrate and say, yes, tennis is getting the attention it deserves. Bouchard in the Wimbledon final helped a little bit, but to all of a sudden adopt Bianca and put her on a pedestal like she is tennis in Canada, and Canada's on the map. But we don't do that with soccer. I find it very, very, very interesting. But let's talk about some national team, just off the topic of Alphonso Davies. We've heard Kurt and Ollie chime in a lot, and if James brings up a point you want to build on, please feel free. Open up and join our forum. But James, we haven't had the chance to ask you yet, other than Alphonso's fantastic rise, where do you see the state of the Canadian men's national team for someone who's been in this country covering Canadian soccer for so many years?
Yeah, obviously we're on the cusp of something pretty great. Whether that means a World Cup berth, the next World Cup, don't know. We're going to see. It's certainly possible. We're seeing for the first time, maybe ever, genuine superstars emerging. Alfonso Davies can be a superstar. We've had good players before. Paul Stalteri, speaking of German football, was an excellent player. Won a championship with Werder Bremen. Obviously, my good friend Craig Forrest, had a great career. These are star players. Alfonso can be a superstar, and we haven't had that before. Jonathan David might follow suit as well. So there's obviously great hope. We've got a manager who's very forward-thinking, very modern in his approach to the national men's team. But I think we also have to take a bit of a breath now and again in that, yes, the results have been decent, but overall it's been pretty soft competition. There was the result against the States, which was fantastic, but it was, and Kurt will agree with this, it wasn't a full-strength US team that Canada beat. Still a great result, historic, wonderful, great night. That was important for the progression of this team. But let's just take a bit of a breath. We're not there yet. I look at the team and I like the strength, obviously, in attack. I'm a bit concerned about the midfield right now. Just who's going to drive this team forward. Atiba is still really important if he's still playing. Scotty Arfield is in his early 30s now. I love Scotty Arfield. What a player he is. But he's not a kid. In 2026, when we think games on this continent, in this country, will he be a factor? So there's still in that potential stage for this team, which is something because for many years there wasn't a potential stage. That's what I'm saying. So overall, I'm happy with the way it's going, and I think we should be excited about the future.
I'm going to be really quick on this one because I like the point I think Oliver is going to make on just the expectations of Canada's men's national team. For me, it all comes down to results. And I'm just afraid that there isn't evidence there yet to suggest that the results have been better over the last few years. For me, unless I'm forgetting a match, I would say there's been 4 big tests for John Herdman and Canada's men's national team. They've passed one of them, which was the game against the United States at home. They've lost 3 of them, which is the return leg in the U.S., the game against Haiti at the Gold Cup, and then obviously they also lost to Mexico at the Gold Cup. So beating the teams they are supposed to beat, sure, and still coming up short in games where they're really being tested, as James said.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, as Kurt mentioned, I do think that expectations should go up a little bit based on the quality of this group. I think there's still positions of weakness. There's still a lack of depth for sure, but there are, genuine star quality players, Davies and David being the 2 big ones, but also, just some of the top MLS players now, like Kay and Azorio and Cavallini, I think are an upgrade on what we've seen in years gone by. So I think with that being the case, we should raise our expectations that certainly we can beat a team like Haiti. And also that we can go into these World Cup qualification formats, and whichever one we're in, we can go away from home to Panama or to Honduras and actually compete and get a result and not expect to, be CONCACAF, so to speak.
And just that really quick, Adam, it was less than a decade ago that we were talking about players coming into this Canada team that didn't even have clubs.
Yeah.
Players who you saw the selection come out and you actually had to Google who they were because you'd never heard of them, and they were playing in the Portuguese 3rd division, right? So I agree. Expectations need to be raised because the level of player, most places on the pitch, maybe not everywhere in defense just yet, but most places on the pitch is at a very, very high level compared to where it was less than a decade ago.
Although I'll say this, we discussed this on my podcast, Footy Prime, on Monday. 8 years ago was obviously the San Pedro Sula debacle, 8-1. And people forget, though, prior to that game, there was such incredible hope around that group of players. Julian de Guzman, Dwayne de Rosario, Jonathan de Guzman was saying, if we get the Hex, I'm in. I'm playing for Canada. David Hoylett at the time wasn't Kurt's laughing again. David Hoylett was again.
I love when players say that. They give you an ultimatum.
It's incredible, right? But still, I remember the buzz around Canadian soccer saying, finally we got some depth. Finally we got some good young players who want to commit to this team. We can push forward, and it all fell apart, obviously. So we have been, within a decade, there have been good moments when we thought that we're that close to making the big step forward, and it didn't happen. I'm more confident now, I think, than I was then, mind you. But just to forewarn people that it's not quite as straightforward as they might think.
Yeah. Ollie, you're getting some love online.
Oh God.
Are you ready for this?
What does that
It's
mean?
genuine love. One of our most interactive Twitter users, Victoria Gooner, says,
Oh yeah.
Ollie is the Michael Cox of OneSoccer. He goes on to add, so many amazing pundits and knowledgeable reporters in Canada. So thank
Zonal
you,
marking
Victoria.
Canadian. I love it.
There's a reason. I think I recently muted that guy. There's a reason.
How big is your mute list? I don't want to know that.
Keep muting, Cal. I'll take the praise where I can get it.
Yeah, take the praise.
It's big. It's big.
James, we could go on for an hour about your journey, and we'll have to have you on again, assuming you're not sick of us after this one and only show. But
just Kurt, I'm just sick of Kurt right now.
And I promise you that this isn't a backhanded compliment, but I will say, for a lot of people, especially younger people, soccer fans in this country, you were the voice, you were the host in that chair growing up, whether it was on the Score or on Sportsnet. So a lot of the younger viewers and just passionate people about soccer in this country grew up with you as our host. And I want to ask you, since you started in Canada, what have you noticed as some of the biggest changes, aside from a dedicated online OneSoccer, DAZN coming into the mix, more digital, but what have you noticed from a host perspective have been the biggest changes from when you first took that seat to right now?
Well, I'll say nowadays, if you're, a TV sports personality, be it a host or a pundit, you're always a host or a pundit. It's 24/7. You can't escape it, right? So
right.
when I first started out on air, I think I was on camera for the first time in 2001, around there sometime, I think it was. And then, I was on TV, and then I went home and I forgot about it. Now, I would go home and I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. You have to always have that persona that you think you know what you're talking about. You cannot escape it. A lot more pressure in that regard. But from a footballing standpoint, I think the general IQ of the Canadian football market is so much greater now than it was. When I first started out, I'd just be dealing with a lot of expats from wherever they're from in the world, and they love their sport. Not too many. There were a few, but not too many like Canadian kids. And now, the general IQ has improved so much with Canadians born and bred in Canada who love the game, who understand the game as well, and can really challenge you. And you've got to be on your toes because they will call you out pretty quickly. So I think when I say, we're not yet a football nation, but we are getting closer, that's why, there's people like yourself, Adam, little whippersnappers, are moving through their careers in life in general. You're really holding us old guys more accountable than ever before, and that's a good thing.
We won't push you into the retirement home too soon.
I'm still pretty young. I feel young, despite the grey hair coming through. Yes, terrible.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel young.
Look at this grey hair. My word, what has happened?
All right. I know we were joking about having you on, and you, as much as you begged Kurt to bring you on, but it wasn't just because you wanted to chat soccer. You really just wanted to promote your burgeoning, your growing, blossoming pie business. How did James Sharman start a pie business? What's the story there for people who may not know? It's
my side hustle. You know what? It may surprise a lot of the viewers out there, but sports media is a bit of a fragile industry. And you might want to have a plan B just in case, because things can happen. DAZN, that kind of stuff, right? You might lose, but no, I love cooking. I've always loved cooking, and I realized about 3 years ago now that there's a lack of great meat pies in where I was living in Toronto, where I'm in Toronto. There are some good places, but not too many.
Yeah, yes and no, James. Yes and no.
Yes and no. Well,
yes and no. If you go to my fridge right now, there are a few pies in there actually. None of them are Sharman's proper pies, however. But
you're a trader.
There is a Sanigan's shepherd's pie.
Okay.
There is a Sanigan's potato and leek and chicken pie. Mm-hmm. So until further notice, and potentially receiving one of your pies, I am continuing to support Sanigan's.
You could just ask
pie.
for a pie. You
I know
didn't
exactly.
have to bury him. My God, Larson.
And for the record, I don't consider a shepherd's pie a pie.
No, I said that yesterday.
So. We're trying to.
I'm glad. A pie should have pastry around it, right?
Oh, correct, for sure.
Well, a hot dog's a sandwich. And a shepherd's pie is a pie.
Well,
Okay,
we
we're
can debate
gonna-
this as long as you want, mate. But listen, if you want pies, Kurt, just come out and say it. I'll give you a couple of pies for crying out loud. You're just shameless, aren't you?
Oh, okay.
I'm with you. Look, I grew up. My dad's side of the family is Welsh, but my mom's side of the family is French Canadian. So we would make tortilla every year, and like we would make like 30 of them. So I'm very happy to hear that there are people who are buying in and believing in the pie cause as much.
I didn't know what a tortilla was until about 2 years ago, honestly, and now it's like one of our biggest sellers. So
yeah,
it's
a
pie
big deal
culture.
there.
We're reinventing pie culture. That's what we say here at Sharman's proper.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's take a look at the watch. We're pretty much near the end of our time with you, James. And I apologize to everyone who missed our first take at this because we had a lengthy discussion about my leather jacket, which I'm sure would have been riveting content for all the viewers. But James, we none of you could look right into the camera when you said that.
I think we agree. We went through, was it Michael Jackson? Was it Prince? I think we settled on 1978 Freddie Mercury.
It was that weird thing too, where I didn't know whether I had to tell the same jokes over, so I just abandoned them.
I know, it's so difficult. It happens a lot. You kill it to start it, and then you have to re-record it, and it's like, can you revisit it?
I just abandoned it.
I know.
The viewers can take our word for it that it was absolutely hilarious.
It was can't miss content, except you all missed it. So that is where we're gonna have to leave it off today. James, how was your trial? I guess we should ask Kurt, how did James do?
Really good. Sorry, my attention just got grabbed by an emergency alert on your phone. On my phone.
Yeah.
So it turns out it's just the same alert I've been getting every day for the last 10 days. But I think the trial went fairly well. Maybe we'll be seeing more of James in the future.
Well, that's assuming James wants to be seen more in the future.
We
should ask him that too.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if more me means less Kurt, then I'm all for it.
That's it. That's where we end today. James, thanks very much for being with us today. We'll do this again real soon, we hope. Kurt, Ollie, enjoy your weekends. Everybody, we will be back on Monday. We're going to take Saturday and Sunday off. Not that much is going to change because we still can't leave our homes, but we hope you stay healthy, stay sane, and a big thank you to all of our frontline emergency workers and everyone else keeping us safe. We'll talk to you very soon on the Player and Pundit Hangout.